our speaker for the evening. We are so very fortunate to have with us tonight Captain Bridget Altenburg of the U.S. Army. Captain Altenburg served in the U.S. Army and graduated from West Point Academy in 1995, 2 years after Don't Ask, Don't Tell became the law, which meant you're under a lot of pressure after that one. She was a founding member of Nights Out, an organization that was founded to overturn the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, and she may tell us a little bit about Nights Out. We marched with them in D.C. many times. During her time in the military, she served as an Army engineer for 5 years, including 3 deployments to Kosovo in the former Yugoslavia. Captain Altenburg is continuing to serve her country, currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer of the National AVER Network. She is responsible for key areas of strategic growth, including veterans programming, technology training, corporate relationships, and social enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Altenburg.
Army groupies yelling up here? Oh, come on. So you'll have to forgive me. I wrote something last weekend. I was for tonight. I wrote about the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and open trans service and all the progress we had made, and then spent 3 days in the fetal position. So today, I don't know if any of those of you that are friends of mine on Facebook saw the panicked, oh dear God, what do I do? Please help me, what can I say to this group today? And so I did some furious keyboarding today, and so I may have to look at my notes a little more than I would otherwise have had to. So forgive me for that. But I will say that last weekend it was really fun to reflect on all the accomplishments that we've made in the last few years, and particularly to reflect on all of the friends that have made such a difference in the world. Sue Fulton, if you guys know Sue Fulton, yeah, right. The puppet master, I like to call her. Working to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Allison Robinson, familiar with Allison Robinson? Really incredible ally and helped to push open trans service. And Lisa Jaster, who's recently become a friend of mine, showing that women can do the toughest jobs in the military as a 37-year-old mother of 2, graduated Ranger School last year. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it was fun to reflect on all that, even though I had to make a few changes to where we're going from here. So anyway, I love my time in the military. I think we all kind of had good things and bad things about the military. I loved being one of the guys. I loved having a bunch of brothers. Even serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I felt a camaraderie that I've never really been able to find in the civilian world. And as a woman veteran, I find myself in awe of the women who went before and the women who came after me and who blazed a trail for all of us to follow. I did add a little bit of history here because I'm married to a historian, and historical context is very important to her. So this part is for her. Margaret Corbin. Does anyone know the name Margaret Corbin? No, not familiar. Okay, all right. We're gonna go back into history here. Margaret Corbin is arguably the first woman to serve in the American military. She served during the Revolutionary War, believe it or not, beside her husband, who was an artilleryman. And he fell, and she kept the guns going after he fell. And her fellow soldiers were so impressed with her that she became famous and actually is the first woman to earn a pension from the U.S. government for her service in the military. And West Point named the women's group the Corbin Forum in her honor. So she has quite a legacy. And then from then until World War I, women served as support nurses and those sorts of things, but they were not officially in the military. And during World War II, we know women served as pilots and nurses, mechanics, always in non-combat roles. Although, believe it or not, did you guys know this? 88 women were captured and prisoners of war during World War II. I didn't know that. This is what happens when you do your research. In 1973, the draft ended, and we had an all-volunteer force for the first time. And that required a broader pool of talent and new opportunities for women. So in 1976, the first women were admitted to the service academies. And I'm proud to know many of those first 52 women that went to graduated from West Point. In 1991, right here we go. Women became authorized to fly combat missions, and a couple years later, they even let them into combat ships on the Navy. You know, the Navy always has to follow behind. Then in 1994, we saw the beginning of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which hit women really twice as hard as men, because there was sort of a double whammy of dealing with the already existing sexism and homophobia, and women's careers were disproportionately ended as a result of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So it would be a long time before we saw more progress on the path of inclusion. I remember when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was passed. I remember I was a cadet at West Point, firmly hanging out in the closet, even to myself. And after West Point, I served as an Army engineer in a 12 Charlie combat bridge unit. Any 12 Charlies? Any 12 anythings? Any engineers? No, nobody, not a single one. You know, that actually shows something about this group, because 12 Charlies has no GT requirement, which means you could be really dumb. So clearly this audience is, you guys had different MOSs you could pick, right? My soldiers were really wonderful, but dumb as rocks. God bless them, God bless them. But anyway, they had just opened 12 Charlie units to women officers, and they were about to open it to women enlisted. So I was one of 3 women in my company. Had about 100 soldiers, and there were 3 women officers and no women enlisted. So this is the part where Colleen's going to roll her eyes. I slept in a GP medium tent with 10 men, and I say that all the time. I slept in a tent with 10 men for a year. You can just suck it up. Just laughing. And got dressed in my sleeping bag for a year, and every morning I'd wake up to Sergeant Mac with his face and his lip full of dip, and I'd quickly pull on my, I think he slept with it. I really do, because it's disgusting. I'd quickly pull on my battle rattle and go off to the bathroom and just try to find some peace to myself. Our mission was to open up lines of communication so that people could vote. My first bridge build was in the zone of separation between the warring factions. And afterwards, my platoon, they're supposed to throw you in the gap of whatever you've bridged as a way to kind of, hey, you did your first bridge build, congratulations, and then they throw you in the water. Well, of course, all of the bridges were in minefields, or there was mines everywhere, so luckily they didn't haze me that badly. And instead, they tossed me in a mud pit in the motor pool, and then we drank near beer. Anyone else love some near beer? Near beer fans. My sister actually drank near beer when she was 7.
Is that me?
Yeah, remember that? We were in Dad's house, and he didn't have anything but Triscuits and near beer, and you were 7 years old, and you woke up and you just started drinking some near beer. Yeah.
Memories.
That's what siblings are for.
A couple years later, I had my final deployment. This time it was in Albania in support of the air war in Kosovo. This time I was the aide to the corps commander. We lived in squalor, hip-deep mud, no showers, on our side of the runway, and then on the other side of the runway, see, this is the part where the Air Force gets their hazing. On the other side of the runway, so the water comes this way, and so we were in just muddy squalor, and then the Air Force decided they're going to build their, they're going to be smart, and they're going to build everything on the other side. So they had, I swear they had tennis courts. I think they had. I mean, I literally remember the TAC NCO, she missed we were in light discipline, right? So you didn't have any lights, you could only use a red light. And she fell off the boardwalk into the pit as she was coming out of the bathroom. And I literally was up to her chest in mud and couldn't get out. We had to get a tow rope to get her out. And meanwhile, the Air Force, we'd drive around to the other side of the Air Force, and they were running around playing basketball. We're like, what is up with this? But anyway, what we did is we flew, we were preparing for potentially going into Kosovo with helicopters and artillery. So remember, this was during the air war. So they were hitting stuff from pretty high up, and they needed to have a plan if they needed to go in low. And so we would go up to Kukesh, where there was a refugee camp up there, and we would talk to the Kosovo Liberation Army and get intel on targeting. And at first, the general didn't want to take me, and then there was the best protective service detail member he had was a female sergeant who I'm still friends with. She's a badass. But he didn't want to bring us, because he said, you know, the KLL's Muslim, and they don't like women, so you guys need to stay behind. And I was a first lieutenant, and I was like, oh, yeah, yes, sir, yeah. And the sergeant was like, fuck that. I remember I told her this a year ago. I said, do you remember that time you told the 3-star general to go F himself? And she remembered it with fondness. She said, I don't really remember it that way. I was like, that's how I remember it. And she really kind of told him that, you know, that's not okay. And he took us, and not only did he take us, he made us front and center, and he made them realize that, you know, we value our women as much as our men. The other thing I remember about this deployment, it was the first time that I deployed with a significant other under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And my girlfriend was awesome. She sent like 2-foot by 2-foot boxes full of food and candy and like raviolios. I mean, it was incredible. Like, it has like 20, 50-pound boxes, and my soldiers would come back to the tent for meal call and be like, ma'am, you got another one. And of course I shared it with them, because that's what you do. But the return address said Natalie right there on the top of it, and no one asked, and I didn't tell. So what was funny about it is, when we came home, we got home, and my soldiers got to celebrate with their loved ones, and I sort of drove past them and went back to our apartment. But years later, I asked the protective service detail person and a couple of the other NCOs that I became friends with as a civilian. I asked them, and they said, well, yeah, sure, I knew she was your girlfriend. I just didn't care. So I told that story a lot when I was lobbying Congress. I said, nobody cares. It's time to go. Nobody cares. So looking back, it always feels like things happened faster than they really did. When you stayed in the military, and I know there's a lot of people here that stayed in the military for a long time, it must seem like the pace of change is just glacially slow. It took decades for women to gain opportunities beyond nursing, and another 20 years before they could serve as combat pilots. And here we are, 23 years later, finally integrating the rest of the combat arms to women. I have a friend who graduated West Point in that first class, and she petitioned the DoD in 1980 to go infantry. Well, this woman right now, by the way, is a master's champion in cyclocross, mountain biking, pursuit, time trial, and road race. So anyone that's a cyclist know what that's like? That's like getting a championship in hockey and figure skating. So she's incredible. I saw Lillian last summer. We both went to the Ranger School graduation to support the first 2 women graduates from Ranger School. It was an incredible day. It took us a while to figure out who they were, because there were 100 people with shaved heads, and they had their shaved heads. And we finally figured out, oh, there she is, there's Kristen, there's Shay. And as soon as we figured out, it was like, just this huge female roar. And they looked up, probably because they hadn't heard a female voice in 4 months. And then they looked up and they saw 80+ West Point women, all there, that came to their graduation. And as I sat next to Lillian, I knew she could have graduated Ranger School 35 years ago. But no one shouted louder than she did to see these 2 accomplish what many thought women couldn't do. So I don't know if you guys know this, but 10 women just finished infantry officer basic course and are on their way to Ranger School now. And I just heard that 4 of them passed the 12-mile ruck run and are on their way to Camp Darby right now. So, named after, of course. 5 years ago, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell ended, we left unfinished work. In our excitement, we forgot our trans brothers and sisters who have continued to get kicked out of the military. And despite the fact that trans people volunteer to serve, I didn't know this, but I learned this from Sue Fulton. Trans people volunteer to serve at 5 times the rate of the general population. They face terrible struggles in the military. And last year, I had just said it was a good friend, but it's Sue. Sue brought a group of trans service members. I don't know if this is public knowledge, but you'll have to keep it to yourself if it's not. But she quietly brought a group of trans service members to meet with the senior leadership at the Pentagon. And over the course of an embarrassing round of questions, the group patiently explained things like where they go to the bathroom, how they deal with misgendered grooming requirements, and what it really means to transition. Senior leaders learned that one of the service members had a long list of poor reviews due to grooming requirements, but that she was the best intel officer in the division. And I believe this honest conversation led directly to the policy changes that we're seeing now. All of these changes made our military stronger. People who fought these changes initially have come back later and said, women made the military better, or open service made our military stronger. Colin Powell said that a few years ago. So, what does Tuesday mean for us as a country and the progress we've made in the military? And I don't know the answer. I don't know if open service will remain. I don't know if women will continue to serve in combat arms. But I do know that none of this progress was made by people running away. Progress was made by people who stood up to injustice, people who advocated for what they believed in, and people who risked their careers to be open and honest. Groups like this have become that much more important since Tuesday. And so I hope that we will stand together, stand for those who can't speak out, and get back off the mat and fight.
Yeah.
We don't have things like complicated electrical things. If it doesn't fit, you get a sledgehammer.
Say more bad things about the Navy.